In this video I'm going to give an overview of how Scineric Workspace manages files and folders. To do this I'm going to start by showing you an existing directory on my hard drive. The one I have open on the right is a Xilinx core gen output for a GTX wizard in ISE 14.1. So what you see on the output is some files grouped in the directory structure that Xilinx defines for their cores. And if you go into all of these directories, you will notice that there is a bunch of files underneath them as expected. What I'm going to do in Scineric Workspace now is I'm going to create a Scineric Workspace design on top of this folder. So I'm going to go to Add Design, then Create Design from Folder, and I'm going to select that directory. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say Search all subfolders to allow it to search through this whole directory structure underneath this directory. So when you click on Next, it will ask you for some information about the design. We're just going to use the defaults. You will notice that the target path in the working folder directory settings part of this widget is pointing to the existing directory on my hard drive. When I click on Finish, you will notice that it will create a design for us. At this point, I'm going to make the Scineric Workspace full screen. Okay, so what you're seeing now is Scineric Workspace representation of that design. Just to go back to that directory, you will notice that Scineric Workspace created a IP-exact component file in this directory, which it will use to manage all file references in the design. When we look at our design, we will notice that all the files have been added to something we call design nodes. So design nodes are tree nodes in our design tree where files can be hooked underneath. Notice that the Scineric Workspace HDL database, which is used for this design, has knowledge of all the files that are hooked underneath nodes. So if you scroll all the way down, you will notice that it picked up all the different files and it knew what to do with them, and it also gives you proper file type descriptions for these files. The files that it does not know what to do with will go underneath unsorted. This brings us to how Scineric Workspace knows how to do this. Scineric Workspace is built on top of file association databases. A file association database is a set of rules on how a design must be managed. Existing databases are available for HDL design specifically, and then we have firmware vendor extensions for that HDL database. At the moment we are looking at the Xilinx design, so all of these file associations will come from the Xilinx extension database. What you see here is obviously not the directory structure of the actual physical hard drive, it's a layer on top of that. This layer allows us to add information or metadata to a file. For example, when you click on a file, you will get a bunch of information, and in the bottom right of the screen you will see that there's properties on this file. So the file association database can, for example, tell us that this was a generated file. So if you look at generated item, you'll see it's true. Also, if you're going to look under the build folder, you will see all of these items are marked as true. This is very powerful. It allows us to create file association databases, share them, update them, and let them evolve over time, and anybody can use that file association database without even knowing that it exists to get all this knowledge and get all their files grouped using this amount of knowledge stored in your file association database. What I want to do next is show how you can add files to your design. I'm going to go to a random directory on my hard drive, and I'm going to select some files and drag and drop them onto my design. When you do that, you will get a context menu that pops up, and you will have different options. I'm going to select a quick add from current location, which will add a reference to those files which are not in this design's working directory to my design. You can also copy files to your working directory, and they will be placed in a directory that's defined by the rules in the file association database. Lastly, you can also move them, or you can go to the more add options, which will give you advanced options. Now you want to add files. That's normally used when you want to add lots of files. So if I click on quick add from current location, you will notice that those files have been added. Now they will be added right at the bottom under unsorted, because those files are not recognized by the Xilinx database or the HDL database. At this point, it's worth mentioning that The structure you see is all stored in a IPExact component. Thus, Scineric Workspace runs on top of IPExact repositories. When you create a new design, it will be placed in your repository, or in this case we created from a folder that wasn't in our repository, so it will sit in that directory. However, in most cases you will create new designs which will be placed in your IPExact repository for you. If you're familiar with IPExact, you will know about the file sets element, and Scineric will add all these files underneath the file set element. It also allows you to manage design folders, so if we switch to the folders tab, you will notice that there's the design folders item. There's nothing at the moment, so let's add a folder. So if I'm going to add these 3 folders over here, again you drag and drop them, and we're going to add them from the current location. Notice that these files are now part of our, or these folders are now part of our design. When you click on any of them, you can see on the far right of the screen an arrow which you can expand, and you can view the contents of these folders. When I switch back to the files view, I want to show more detail of what you can do in this view. Let me close a few nodes to make it easier to manage. Something to note here is that Scineric will store the state of your view. For example, it will store all the categories that was expanded and also all the nodes. A few of the features that you can see here is that you can change the detail level, which allows you to manage very big designs with thousands of files in, and Scineric should keep up with its performance if you go to best performance. You can also switch to a table mode, so let's select the file underneath black boxes, and when we click on the table icon, we will switch the view to a table view mode. Notice that it remembered which file we had selected, and it will go to that node's table view. So notice that this is all the files underneath that node. You can navigate this view using your right, left, top or up and down buttons on your keyboard, so you can easily navigate a big design just using your keyboard, as you see on the screen. For this demo, I'm just going to go back to the tree view mode for now. The coloring of files are important. Green means that the file exists at the moment, and if that file is removed on your file system for whatever reason, this file will become red. So let's demonstrate that. If I go and open file path, you will notice all of these files. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete a couple of them. Notice that in Scineric Workspace they immediately become red, showing that those files don't exist anymore. This is a very useful feature, especially if you work on big designs where you did not create all the blocks in your design, and you're not responsible to manage those blocks. What we found is that in many cases files move around or files get deleted and your design doesn't build anymore, and it's difficult to see that if you don't have this type of view. As you can see now, all the files have been assigned to under specific nodes for us. However, in some situations you might want to use custom nodes. This is easily done by selecting the files you want to assign to custom nodes, and then by right-clicking and drag and dropping it. So if we want to move these files to products, you right-click, you drag it to products, and you leave it. So now these files are moved and they have custom nodes. If a file has a custom node, you can right-click on it and select Restore Default Node. It will be restored to its default node. Right-click on the file also has other actions that you would expect. So you can open the file, and you can, in the settings dialog, you can select which editor you want to open different files, like text files and binary files, and you have different things that you would expect on a file. Another thing that I want to demonstrate here is that files have activity associated with them if their parent node is defined like that in the file association database. In the HTL design database, the constraints node and the HTL node has activity for their files. Activity is displayed using this checkbox next to the file, and you can select files and unselect files. Active files will be used in your builds, so if you build a design in Scineric Workspace, those files will be part of your build. If the file was unchecked, it won't be part of your build. The last thing I want to show in this video is how you can see the actual physical directory of your working folder of your design in this view. So if you in your side widgets on the left, if you click on design repository, you can switch that to current working folder. The current working folder is the directory structure that we saw earlier when we looked at it in Windows Explorer. So let's open that again. And you will notice that's the directory structure that we're seeing. So it does allow you to see the physical structure compared to your IPExact component representation of that directory. One more thing to show is that you can easily sync this layer on top of your file system or on top of your working directory with the actual physical path. So if we're going to add some more files, let's add them to the working directory. We will add random files. Okay, so there's 3 files added, and also notice, remember that we removed a couple of netlists. So when you right click on your top level node or any of the other nodes, or for this demo we're going to focus on the top node, but you can do it for any node in your design. So let's right click on the top node and we can say sync to physical location deep, meaning it will sync to through the whole hierarchy of your working folder. It will give us an overview of what it's going to do. So it will tell us it's going to remove the 2 non-existing files, and it will add 4 missing file references. So when you click yes, you will notice that your design is updated and it's now in sync with your underlying working directory. In the IPExact tab of your design, you can see the IPExact component representation if your design was opened from an IPExact component. In our case it was not done because we created it fresh from a folder, but in other cases, or if you open this design in the future again, you can see your IPExact component representation in here. One last thing to show maybe is the properties tab. So the properties tab has a bunch of properties underneath it, and that maps directly to your IPExact parameter node in your XML file. So you can add parameters here or remove parameters, and they will map directly to the parameters in your IPExact component. So if you open a component that has parameters set in a different IDE or environment, they will show up here and you can edit them. That's what I want to show in this video. If you find this interesting, get an evaluation copy and play with it. We would like to get your feedback. Thank you.